Good afternoon, everyone. I have 2 p.m. Welcome, and I'd like to call to order today's Thursday, April 6th meeting of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation, visible, justice for all. And if you're wondering, your eyes are not deceiving you. I am the only commissioner in the room here today, but as luck would have it, Commissioner Vero is joining us virtually, so we do have a quorum of the commission to conduct business. Missoula County wants to acknowledge that this event today takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. We have a few public announcements, and to begin with, either Kyla or Cheryl, would you like to please talk us through closed captioning today?
Yes. Hello, everyone. If you're joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on your screen. If you're joining us in person, we'll have closed captioning on all the screens here in the Sophie Moise room, and we have assistive listening devices available. Please come see us if you would like to get one. We ask that all speakers today please remember to speak slowly and clearly during the meeting. This helps with the accuracy of the closed captioning. There'll be multiple chances during the meeting for public comment virtually. During those times, if you would like to speak, we'd ask that you use the raise your hand feature. If you're on Microsoft Teams, this is a small hand button. If you're calling in on the phone, you need to hit *5 to raise your hand, and then once called in, you need to hit *6 to unmute. If you have any questions during the meeting, please come see us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyla. And again, when you come up to the mic at the front of the room here, if you're wanting to testify, please be sure to hit the button on the base of the microphone, and that should turn the light from red to green, at which point you'll know you can talk. We have a number of proclamations today, beginning with National Public Safety Telecommunications or Telecommuters, not telecommuters, Telecommunicators Week, as I've heard it referred to elsewhere. So whereas public safety was the first service provided by a government to its citizens, and the safety and well-being of its citizens and emergency first responders continues to be one of the foremost concerns of Missoula County, and whereas ensuring public safety and well-being requires the ability to receive calls for help and immediately send responders to provide that help, and whereas 911 is the critical first link in the chain in delivering public safety services, and whereas the public safety telecommunicators who work in 911 display a superior level of commitment, dedication, and professionalism in accomplishing their mission of receiving calls for help from citizens, dispatching emergency response agencies, and maintaining a communication link with the responders to ensure their safety. And whereas these same public safety telecommunicators provide this service to the public and first responders 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, working extraordinarily long hours with difficult schedules to process more than 120,000 calls annually in Missoula County. And whereas the vital role of the public safety telecommunicator is often unknown and not recognized, now therefore we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners, recognize the week of April 9th through the 15th, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. We thank the telecommunicators in 911 for all their efforts and hard work under very difficult circumstances. The community truly would not be safe without them. We also encourage the community to recognize the importance of the function of 911 and to thank those dedicated individuals in writing. And a big hats off to our 911 staff members who are directly below us in this building, working 24/7. Anyone want to comment on that particular proclamation? Okay, thank you. Our second proclamation is in recognition of Fair Housing Month. Whereas Title VII of the Civil Rights Act commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act, which guarantees fair housing for all residents of the United States, was signed into law in April 1968. And whereas the month of April is nationally recognized as Fair Housing Month and a time to reflect on and reaffirm our national commitment to the right that fair housing opportunity is available to everyone in the United States without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. And whereas Missoula County recognizes that all our residents are free to purchase, rent, finance, and insure their homes without regard to their sex, marital status, race, creed, religion, color, age, familial status, physical or mental disability, or national origin. And whereas Missoula County welcomes this opportunity to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the adoption of the Fair Housing Act, and to rededicate our commitment to the principle of fair housing for all by strengthening our efforts that address discrimination in our communities, supporting programs that will educate the public concerning their rights to equal housing opportunity, and assuring every person their right to live free of the fear of housing discrimination. Now, therefore, we, Josh Slotnick, Dave Strohmeyer, and Juanita Vero, Missoula County Commissioners in the state of Montana, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Fair Housing Month in Missoula County, and we encourage all citizens to recognize this celebration for the purpose of improving the quality of life for all residents. Anyone want to speak to Fair Housing Month in Missoula County? Okay. Proclamation number 3. And I think there might be some folks here to speak to this one. Whereas volunteers are one of our country's greatest treasure or greatest resources, and whereas volunteers adapted to the changing needs of the community in response to the coronavirus pandemic, and they have continued to show their resilience and creativity in finding new ways to help people and encourage others. And whereas these volunteers improve Missoula County with their dedication, willingness to share time and expertise, and ability to meet community needs to make a lasting difference. And whereas we wish to honor and recognize volunteers collectively and the many contributions they make that enhance Missoula County's quality of life. Now, therefore, we, Jordan Hess, Mayor of the City of Missoula, and the Missoula Board of County Commissioners, in coordination with Missoula Aging Services, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Volunteer Month, and we encourage all citizens, certainly here in Missoula County, to join in recognition of our county's volunteers this month and throughout the year. It looks like there might be some folks from Missoula Aging Services here, or perhaps others. So come on up to the microphone if you would like, if you wanted to say anything, and then I actually have something to give you also.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us here today, and thank you for this proclamation. My name is Rhea Overholt, and as the Volunteer Services Manager for Missoula Aging Services, I have the honor and privilege of working with about 550 dedicated volunteers who spend their time in this community supporting everything from our Meals on Wheels program, Office of Emergency Management, volunteers within the school systems, and I get to see firsthand every day the impact that they have on the lives of our neighbors within this community. And I brought along a few volunteers to introduce to you today because I'm so proud to be able to stand next to them. These women have been coming together for several years now as part of a fundraising effort for Missoula Aging Services. They come every week, they dedicate their time, their energy, their efforts, and they have a lot of fun along the way. So I would like to introduce them because they're really the important people in this entire process. This is Felicia Saunders. She is one of our development and communication volunteers. And I just want to give her the moment to say a few things.
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is just part of our group. We have 8 women that get together. This will be our 8th annual sale that we've cut coming up in June. we work on jewelry that has been donated to Missoula Aging Services, and we get it ready for a sale that we have once a year. So I invite all of you to come to it. It's Saturday, June 10th at St. Anthony Paris, 8 to 3:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you as a county for taking a moment to appreciate the people who are really doing the hard work, and we appreciate it. And now we
I
get to
have
a
something
picture
for you.
with you. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anyone online who would like to speak to this? Well, I will say I have done ride-alongs with Meals on Wheels, and it's a fantastic service that not only delivers food to our friends and neighbors here in Missoula County, but it provides a human connection to folks who otherwise oftentimes are pretty isolated and vulnerable. So thank you for all you do, Missoula Aging Services, and all of the other volunteers in the city of Missoula and Missoula County. Thanks. Our final proclamation is Sexual Assault Action Month. Whereas Sexual Assault Action Month calls attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and has public health and safety implications for the city and county of Missoula and beyond. And whereas rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment harm our community, our friends, and our families, studies show 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men have experienced completed or attempted rape. 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 53 boys experience child sexual abuse at the hands of an adult. And 13% of all college students experience rape or sexual assault through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. And this is graduate and undergraduate students. And whereas people of color, especially Native American women, experience violence, unwanted sexual contact, or abuse at a much higher rate than other groups. And whereas statistics can tell us how many people are harmed, but talking to a survivor reveals the true impact of this violence, loss of safety and trust, and sometimes even the loss of hope. And whereas the goal of this month is not merely awareness, but prevention of sexual harassment, abuse, and assault. And whereas prevention means stopping sexual violence before it happens by changing norms that allow it to exist in the first place, ranging from attitudes, values, and behaviors to laws, institutions, and social norms. And whereas prevention is everyone's job, and all of us can help create safe environments by intervening to stop behavior, promoting healthy attitudes and relationships, and believing survivors and connecting them to resources. And whereas we strongly support the efforts of national, state, and local sexual assault prevention and response programs in their efforts to create safe and healthy communities. Now, therefore, we, Jordan Hess, Mayor of the City of Missoula, Josh Slotnick, Juanita Vero, Dave Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioners, Seth Bodner, President of the University of Montana, and Elizabeth Bowles, President of the Associated Students of the University of Montana, do hereby join the Student Advocacy Resource Center of the University of Montana, the YWCA of Missoula, Project Beacon of All Nations Health Center, First Step at Providence St. Patrick Hospital, the Make Your Move Project of the Missoula City County Health Department, law enforcement agencies, including the Missoula Police Department, Missoula County Sheriff's Office, and the University of Montana Police Department, the Missoula County Community Justice Department, the Special Victims Unit of the Missoula County Attorney's Office, the City Attorney's Office, and communities across the country in playing an active role to prevent sexual violence, along with the United States government and the state of Montana, we do proclaim April 2023 as Sexual Assault Action Month in the city of Missoula and Missoula County. Anyone in the room or online want to comment on this proclamation? Okay. Thank you. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? And if an item is on the agenda later on, you'll have an opportunity to comment on it then. But if there's anything else, now's your chance. Welcome. Please state your name and share with us.
My name is Lily Serber. I'm a sophomore at the University of Montana, and I'm the vice president of a club on campus called Grizzly Stomp Country Swing Dancing. We're a club where twice a week in the evenings, we get a group of people together. It's welcome to university students and the public to come and learn how to country swing dance and line dance, and we just have a good time. We are wanting to put on a event after the rodeo on April 29th. However, since we are a ASUM group, we don't have quite the budget to rent one of the fairground buildings. So I'm here on behalf of the executive officers of the club and our club members asking if the county commissioners would be willing to donate the building to us for the evening of April 29th so we can have a live band play for the community and the public for after the rodeo.
Is there any chance you could leave your contact information with us and we will put you all in touch with the folks you need to be in touch with?
Yes.
Okay, right here, it looks like Kyla is bringing forward the papyrus for you to write your name on. And I guess one question, have you been in touch already with anyone at the fairgrounds about this?
Yes, I have. And I told them that we're like a club group and that we were trying to find sponsors, but due to the short notice, a lot of the businesses around town that I've spoke with have like you have to put in a request for sponsorship money 30 days in advance. And with it coming up on such short notice, it's kind of hard to meet their requirements for that. So that's why I was told by multiple community members that if we came and asked if the county commissioners would donate, there would be a possibility.
Okay, well, we will talk about it and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming out. All right, any other public comment on items not on the agenda, either from folks in the room or online? Okay, seeing none, our current claims list, and these are claims received as of March 21st through March 30th, 2023 by the Commissioner's Office total $1,582,442.98. If you're interested in either that 98 cents or the rest of the million plus, you can go to the electronic version of the agenda, click on the link and drill down into what all that amounts to. We have 4 public hearings today. The way that we work it for these public hearings is we'll open the public hearing, we'll begin with a staff report. That will be followed by the applicant or applicant's representative opportunity to present on the topic. If it's a family transfer, there's some additional questions that will be asked of the applicant. We'll open it up for public comment on the item and close the public hearing, and then the commission will discuss and take action. So our first public hearing is related to Emerald Lakes. This is the Phase 1 final plat adjustment request, and presenting from staff today is Matt Heimel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Matt Heimel with the Planning, Development, and Sustainability Department. In just a moment, I'll bring up a PowerPoint on the screen. So this is a request from Steve and Cindy Jensen, represented by Ron Ewert with Professional Consultants Incorporated, to adjust the final plat for Emerald Lake Estates Phase 1. And the overall goal of this plat adjustment is so that lot 11 of phase 1 can have direct driveway access onto Emerald Lake Loop. There are some restrictions for that access that I'll get to in just a moment. Overall, plat adjustments are a process in county planning that can provide some minor relief or changes to a subdivision plat when there are some contextual changes that would warrant such a change, as long as it meets certain criteria that we have set in our subdivision regulations. So this property, and I have a broad aerial image on the screen, the property is highlighted in a green and black shape. It is lot 11, as I said, of Emerald Lake Estates Phase 1. Address is 670 Emerald Lake Loop. It's about 1.5 miles east of Salmon Lake on Woodworth Road. And here's a closer aerial image showing the vacant property bordering Tote Lake on the south side and Emerald Lake Loop on the north. So Emerald Lake Loop was approved in 2009, creating 22 lots and a common area with a common road that loops around the subdivision. Two components of the review that have bearing on this request are: one, there were some steep slopes, and one of the concerns was to make sure that those were marked as no build and no alteration zones to prohibit the construction of new homes and other improvements on those areas. Also, there was concern to ensure that there was safe driveway access. So some particular lots in phase 1, including lot 11, have defined driveway easements and access limitations to the main road that require their driveways in a certain point. The intent of that requirement was to ensure that those would be the only safe ingress and egress routes for that particular driveway to that lot. And since the platting of that subdivision has become apparent through better topographical mapping and on-the-ground surveying, that there are in fact safer routes, but those require the plat adjustment to be considered. So this is a overhead topographical view of the driveway layout that is required for lot 11. It crosses an easement on lot 12 and has a incline and then a decline as shown in this slope profile. It goes up about a 10% grade and then it descends about a 7.25% grade. The applicant is proposing a few adjustments to the plat that would allow a direct driveway that is landformed to the contours on the slope and are at a much lesser grade. So essentially level in line with the contour elevations.
I'm just going to mute it for just a quick second. We know how we're answering all these questions. But
Could folks mute themselves if they're online? Mute, not moot, excuse me.
Okay, so as I said, the overall goal is for lot 11 to just have direct driveway access onto Emerald Lake Loop. There are three aspects to the...
Cheryl, could you mute folks?
Seems like it's okay. There are three aspects that will be changed, and those are highlighted on the screen here. First, a small portion of the no access strip will be vacated, about 20 to 30 feet wide for the driveway. Second, the easement on lot 12 that is the required location for lot 11 would be vacated. And finally, the no build zone would be redrawn to just allow this driveway to cross through. So any plat adjustment, as I said, is reviewed according to certain criteria. This request was found to be compliant with every one of the criteria, and so staff is recommending approval pursuant to some conditions of approval. Those conditions largely require the final recorded documents and the building permits submittal to be substantially compliant with the information that's in the packet with the staff report, and also requires a construction easement that is noted on the site plan. So I think also Mr. Ewert and the applicant is available today.
Okay, Mr. Ewert. Kyle or Cheryl, is there any chance you could click the, get rid of the recording and transcription panel there? Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Ron Ewert with PCI, and Steve Jensen is here this afternoon. So Steve and his family are excited. They just bought a lot on, I don't know if it's Tote Lake or Emerald Lake. I think it's still officially Tote Lake, but they like calling it Emerald Lake. It's a very beautiful site. As you know, it used to be a gravel mine, and it's been reclaimed and turned into something nice that can generate tax revenue for the county, and also people can come there and enjoy time in their little cabins. So I've worked with Matt quite a bit on this, and I appreciate all his work, and we are in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval. If you have any further questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Is there any public comment on this item? Either in the room or online? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Questions? Juanita, any questions?
No, I appreciate Matt and Ron's explanations earlier in the week, so I'm ready to make a motion unless there's anything that you needed to say.
Nope. Matt, do you have, there it is, the recommended motion. Commissioner Vero, can you see this?
Yes, actually I can. I move to approve the final plat adjustment request for Emerald Lakes Estate Phase 1 based on the findings of facts and conclusions of the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? See none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good luck with your project. Our second public hearing, also staffed by Matt, is the proposed roads family transfer.
All right, Matt Heimel again with Planning Development and Sustainability. I'm going to try and pull up my second PowerPoint, just a moment. Okay, this subdivision exemption application is from Dennis and Gretchen Rhodes, represented by Eli and Associates Incorporated. There are two exemptions requested with this project. One is a aggregation and also a family transfer. And I've noticed we're not seeing the full screen. Oh. Okay, just a moment, stand by. Okay, I think we're all set now. So this is a broad aerial image of the northwest part of the Frenchtown community area. The property is at 16990 Touchette Lane in Frenchtown, and it is unzoned. The property is currently about 7.3 acres. Here's a closer aerial image. The southwest or southern part of the property is developed with one single family residence. And the goal of the family transfer is to gift a 2.5 acre tract on the north side to their adult daughter, Kylie Rhodes. This exhibit is just showing the area for the aggregation. There is a vibrant green line on the southwest portion, and that is not okay for use in a boundary line relocation, but to meet recording requirements needs to be aggregated with this exemption. Again, here is a layout showing the existing site conditions from the application. And the proposed conditions, there would be parcel C1A on the south part at 4.8 acres to be retained in ownership by the claimants. And as I said, parcel C1B will be 2.5 acres to be gifted to their daughter for a proposed home site. We can proceed to the questions for the family transfer claimants.
Is the claimant or applicant? Oh, there you are.
Okay, I have 5 questions. The first question is, Did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No.
Thank you. Do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No.
Will the property be developed?
Yes.
Okay, and will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my questions. So with any subdivision exemption, we review against rebuttable presumptions and evasion criteria. In staff's review, we did identify 3 of those evasion criteria, one of which was the tract was created by a family transfer exemption in February of 2022, and the claimants acquired the property in late May of 2022. In the broader review of the application and all of its documentation and the context, we determined that those 2 did not amount to a conclusion that it's an evasion of subdivision review. There's also a 3rd criteria that has to do with the growth policy. So the growth policy designation for here dates back to the 1975 comprehensive plan, and that recommends a residential density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. And although this family transfer involves a new residential tract, and that is 2.5 acres, it is not out of alignment with the overall pattern of growth that we see for this area. So with that, staff has concluded that it does not appear that there is the attempt to evade subdivision review, and we are recommending approval of the aggregation and family transfer request.
Thank you. Mr. or Mrs. Rhodes, anything else that you'd like to add?
No. No.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this proposed family transfer? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Questions from the commission? Juanita?
I have no questions. This is pretty straightforward.
All right, Matt, do we have a motion? There it is.
I'd move to approve the request by Dennis and Gretchen Rhodes to utilize the aggregation and family transfer exemptions to create and transfer 1 parcel as presented in the subdivision exemption affidavit.
Second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And is there a
Thank you.
second one as well?
What was that?
I'm sorry, were there 2 motions?
Did we have to do a motion for the aggregation and for the exemption, or?
Those were mentioned in the same motion.
Okay, sorry, thanks.
Okay. Very good. It's done. Good luck with what you have planned out there, Mr. and Mrs. Rhodes. Okay, thank you. Our 3rd public hearing today is on the Hollinger family transfer. Are you present?
Yes, Lauren got stuck traveling back from a conference, so I'm going to step in and
okay.
present.
So again, as with the other items, we'll begin with the staff report, move into some questions of the applicant, and then open it up for public comment and take action. So it is all yours, Nick.
Thank you. So yeah, so this is the Hollinger family transfer and aggregation proposal. The claimants are Mark and Joe Hollinger, and the representative is also Eli and Sistriates. So just starting with the background on the project. So the proposal is located up Patty Canyon off of Burning Tree Road. The parcel is currently unaddressed. It is vacant with no structures. It's 23.62 acres in size, and it's zoned in ZD4, which is a Part 1 district created by the citizens of the area. Here's just a zoomed in aerial of the property. You can see Burning Tree Road doing his switch back through, then continuing on upward. So the proposal is to create and transfer 3 tracts to the Hollinger's adult children, and then 1 tract would be retained by the applicants as the remainder. There's also a proposal to aggregate a boundary line that was referenced in Book 105 of Deeds, page 14, and that was through H2 comment. So similar to the last one, this would be a recording requirement. Then here is an exhibit showing the proposed conditions. So the claimants would retain track 1. Their adult son Brooks would receive track 2. Their adult son Christopher would receive track 3, and their adult daughter Holly would receive track 4. And all parcels range in size from 5.3 acres to 6.12 acres. Here's an exhibit showing the slopes on the property. One of the requirements of ZD4 is to demonstrate that there is a building site less than 25 degrees in slope. So green indicates all areas that are in fact less than 25 degrees in slope, and then white is areas that are in excess of 25 degrees in slope. The property is located in the Wee Wee Intermix and has a wildfire hazard level of high. And next, we're going to be going through the rebuttal presumption and general evasion criteria points that were triggered during staff review. So rebuttal presumption number 4 was triggered. The claimants own 13 total properties in Missoula County, including 2 properties located approximately half a mile from the proposed family transfer tract. Additionally, one recipient owns a home in the Patty Canyon area at 105 Hillcrest Loop, approximately 2 miles from the parcel that is proposed for division. General evasion criteria number 6, this is also applicable. The claimant's father did utilize the family transfer exemption in 2001, and then Jill and Mark have utilized the exemptions for construction mortgages, liens, and trust indentures in 2004. General evasion criteria number 9 was also triggered. Just to summarize this one, the intent of the use of the family transfer is for exceptional circumstances under which full subdivision review is unnecessary. Like we said, the background of the claimants currently living in the immediate vicinity of the tract and own additional tracts in Missoula County, and one of the recipients lives nearby. With the number of tracts owned by the claimants, creating additional tracts to give to their children appears as an inappropriate use of the family transfer exemption. Then general evasion criteria number 18, just to summarize this one as well, this criteria point talks about if there are mitigation that would occur if the project were to come through as a minor subdivision as opposed to an exemption. And 2 things that were noted were the wildfire hazard area standards and the hillside standards. Both would probably impose some conditions of approval to mitigate those conditions. Next, I'm going to go over the family transfer questions with the claimant.
Come on up to the microphone.
I'll start by having you state your name for the record. Thank you. So question 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No.
Question number 2, did you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Question 3, have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No.
Question number 4, will the property be developed?
Yes.
And question 5, will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
Thank you. And that concludes the staff report. The staff is recommending denial of the proposal, and I am here for further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hollinger, is there anything you'd like to elaborate on?
Well, I just want to address some of the concerns that you guys had, and I'll go through these real quick. Is Eli and Associates here?
I think they're online, yeah.
Oh, okay. The first one, number 4, that there are, well, we live up Patty Canyon. We've been there for 34 years. So, and our son has a home at the bottom of Patty Canyon. But my response to this, and I sent this in a few days ago, and I hope the people have had a chance to read it, but the other property we own in the county is mostly timberland, agricultural, and it's not really appropriate to our kids building a home on. As far as Brooks's house at the bottom of the canyon, it's a larger home than suits him. He's a single guy, and he would choose to build something that's smaller, more energy efficient and move. I mean, he could have sold that home and not had any home right now. And so let's see. Yeah, the other properties are quite a ways from Missoula, even though they're in Missoula County. They're, you know, their proximity does not, it's not the same. These are good home sites for my kids. Is that clear? Is there any questions, Dave,
No,
on that one?
not on that one. Oh, Juanita, any questions on that particular point?
No, if I got it correctly, the properties, and I'm sorry if this is buffering, but the properties the Hollingers own, they don't feel are necessarily appropriate for the sort of development that they want to do at this stage in their life and their kids' life. Is that correct? That they're wanting something closer to town so they can have smaller, more
Exact-
energy efficient units?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Number 6, let's see. Again, it's kind of the same thing. We're not developers. I'm a violin maker, and actually Brooks works with me on a day-to-day basis. So that's my vocation. Let's see. Again, it goes back to that same answer I had on 4, that the land in Patty Canyon is very desirable for homes, and that's why we're choosing to do that. Any questions on that one? I want to make sure I answer them.
Juanita, any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The other one, number 6, as far as a family transfer that was done somewhere around 2000, we were building a place, and I'm not really sure what this pertains to. As far as I know, Jill and I have never done a family transfer, and I think this is maybe something that was done just so we could get a mortgage from the bank, and then it was transferred back. It wasn't done for any development purposes, only for a loan, and then it was moved back. So any
Yeah.
questions on that one?
Well, maybe John or Nick, anything there just for clarification? Are you aware of what?
I haven't looked at the specific transaction, but in looking at the staff report, it looks like it's exactly what Mr. Hollander's saying. They used part of a piece of property as collateral for security for a loan. Once that loan was paid off, the property took its aggregated form again.
Okay, thank you. Juanita, any questions there?
Nope. Thank you for that, John.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Number 9 is a little bit confusing to me. It's roughly, I'm not sure I really understand that number 9, but we intend to fully comply with any zoning and building permits that are necessary. And I don't see how this would change any of that. We are in compliant for any of the zoning right now with this proposal. And then we would have to continue to go through the building permits and stuff. So I don't understand the.
Maybe Nick or John, would you be able to explain that what subdivision would, maybe I'm not understanding your question, Mr. Hollinger, but I think you're asking what subdivision review would do for this particular proposal that is different than what zoning regulations and building permits and would be asking. Is that right?
Yes, I guess I'm confused because I don't see how doing this would change any of the boundary lines, the size of lots, or how and where we would build on it.
So Nick, let me just elaborate a little bit. So, and this relates to a couple questions I had. As far as zoning compliance goes, or the growth policy, I guess elaborate on the density that is allowable in this particular zoning district, and whether the tracks that are being created here would comply with zoning. And then secondly, when it comes to other unique aspects of this zoning district, whether it's slope or otherwise, what would be picked up during the building permit review versus during subdivision or subdivision exemption here?
Yeah, so just to start with the zoning district. So ZD4 has a lot size minimum of 3 acres. So this would obviously be compliant with there, and also compliant. It has demonstrated a slope angle that is less than 25%. I think what number 9 is specifically getting towards is the use of the family transfer exemption, and not, I think what we're referring to is more of the general provision 18, which would be conditions that would be opposed if it were to come through a subdivision. Number 9 is more trying to get at the essence of what the family transfer was intended to allow, and that would be just the one-time gift to a family member in a scenario where it was deemed acceptable. If we're kind of it does relate to 18 as well, but I think this is more about the use of the exemption and the use of the exemption as a whole, and not what would happen via subdivision. But I will talk about that because that does relate to number 18. And we would be looking at, there are some very similar things because ZD4 is a pretty robust zoning district, but we would be looking at ingress and egress, specifically for fire apparatus and vehicles into driveways. There could be conditions imposed for wildfire mitigation, as well as restrictions related to wildlife habitat or steep slopes as well. So those would be things that would be addressed during subdivision review that potentially would not be addressed during the permitting process. ZD4 does have some standards for slope, as I mentioned, but does not necessarily have any standards for wildfire mitigation or wildlife protection standards.
So this probably has more to do with what you hit on earlier in terms of your sense that the properties that you own are not suitable for development or not in as close proximity to the city of Missoula as these would be. I think that's.
Yeah, thank you. That was a much better summary than I provided on that.
So there's some redundancy here in that I think what this particular point 9 is getting at is what you had addressed earlier in terms of a difference of opinion, that from just taking at face value, there might seem to be other parcels that you own in the general area that would be perhaps developable. But what we're hearing you say is that either due to resource concerns or they're not as proximate or as contiguous to the heart of Missoula as these particular lots are or parcel is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like 30, 50 miles away. So they're not practical.
Okay. So the one that's within 2 miles is the one that your son owns at the base of farther down Patty Canyon Road. Okay. Juanita, any other questions on that one?
No, other than maybe this is adjacent to that, but my understanding is your son owns nearby and your other 2 children are renting, and all 3 of them want to own smaller, more efficient properties, homes. So that's why you're trying to do this. And then this was a unique opportunity that it came up for sale recently, and because you know the neighbors and this is a close neighborhood, is that correct?
That's correct. We've been there for, like I said, 34 years. And also one of my sons has been looking for, Chris has been looking for a house for like 3 years, and we all know what that's like in Missoula.
Okay. Yeah, if you wanted to continue
Okay,
on.
thank you.
Number 11, I just wanted to point out real quickly, I highlighted in the documents I supplied you guys that does the proposed division violate applicable zoning regulations? And we do not intend to. And the proposed, and then you guys are the committee that approves things, did say the proposed division appears to comply with the space and bulk requirements for zoning district and number 4. I just wanted to, we're trying to do the right thing here. And okay, so, any questions on that?
Yeah, maybe this is a question for your consultants with Eli and Associates. So the staff report indicates some lack of certainty that there are buildable lots on sites under 25% slope. However, it sounds like you believe that there are buildable sites that would meet within that criteria. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Joshua with Eli and Associates, and I guess I would request that Matt bring up that latest revision to the slope category map that we provided.
Nick, do you have that?
Is it not this one?
Yes, it is that one. Thank you. Yeah, we went back and forth with PDS staff several times in trying to provide a slope category map that they were able to understand and metabolize. And this is the 4th revision that we provided. And we just made it as simple as possible to show that the green areas are areas that are less than 25%. So it should be obvious that there are ample locations on these tracks to build on.
So how do the building envelopes that were identified in a different schematic overlay with this?
Right, that's a great question. And we basically started to walk it back. We showed a proposed common area and no build zone and some desirable locations that our client wanted to build on. And as we were requested to provide revisions to the slope map, we just started walking back the extent with which we were showing a no build zone. We no longer showed the proposed driveway locations or the home sites because we were giving more than what was required, and then we were sort of paying the price for having done that. So this was what we ended up with in showing for the suitability and compliance with slopes. So we have just finished a family transfer that adjoins this one to the east. It's literally shown right here as tract B4 of COS 5053. And there were great inconsistencies with what we were required to provide to show that there would be suitable and compliant building locations on the property. So we decided that less is more, and this was the exhibit that we decided on asking the reviewers to review on.
So in other words, the schematic with proposed building sites is no longer applicable.
Correct.
Can you, sorry, Josh, or anyone with a pointer, just ballpark ideas of where you're thinking of building besides just the green areas? Because I'm confused about drain fields and water pressure and water quality and roads and blah, blah, blah. Do you have an idea that we could just, with a pointer, show us? Not holding it to you, but holding it to you rather, but if you could just give us an idea of what you guys are thinking about.
Yeah, you know, I guess I take.
Oh, we
as much as I
have
want-
someone controlling a mouse here. If you wanted to talk us through anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So as much as I appreciate you're wanting to understand our client's desire of where they want to build on these tracks, that is something that we're not being held to at this point. And additionally, the note that we're required to place on this family transfer certificate of survey says that this division of land was not reviewed for adequate legal or physical access, that it was not reviewed for compliance with zoning. So there's just some cognitive dissonance going on with, are we reviewing it for zoning compliance at this point, or does that come later?
So if I can jump in,
I
and we
understand that,
would
thanks.
want some feedback from our team here in the room with Missoula County. I think what is safe to say is we don't want to be approving a division of land that cannot be built upon, because that absolutely would, and I'm not saying that is the case here, but if it were, that would go against the grain of what family transfers are intended to accomplish by way of these being lots that someone could actually reside on. So I get it that the original schematic that is no longer applicable is still kind of in the back of our thinking here. But I think what we would want some assurance of is that any of the green areas on this map truly are, of which you're right, there's a fair amount of green on the map, but are they in locations, is the concentration of less than 25% slope in locations that would actually be desirable and for other constraints buildable. So first, Tim, is there something you wanted to add? You look like you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, Tim Worley from PDS. I actually went with 2 other staff to the site to get a sense of whether there were buildable sites, because I found it difficult to determine for sure, and final zoning compliance will be determined if this is approved when permits are submitted. But we wanted to get a sense just on the ground, could you build homes here reasonably? And I think the concern comes from trying to build or trying to access from Burning Tree Drive across steep slopes to access the green areas. For instance, using track 2 as an example, it might be somewhat challenging to do that. Now, a very clear marker of whether this isn't zoning compliant would be if the acreage sizes were inappropriate. This is a little bit more elusive because yes, there are green areas that are buildable. They don't necessarily all have to access directly onto Burning Tree Drive. It's just that it's not a slam dunk in that 25% buildable area category for us. I actually felt that it revealed itself to be more buildable upon observing it on site. It just that we had a difficult time with the graphic ascertaining whether there were buildable sites under 25% that were reasonably accessible by driveways that would meet fire code, basically.
Mr. Hollinger, anything?
Well, I understand all the concerns, and I also understand that when it comes time to defining a building site, we will have to meet all those criteria, and we plan on doing so.
And I guess John, do you have anything else that you wanted to add? You look like you're particularly
No,
astute today.
I sit here, I mean, these are difficult hearings sometimes. And I certainly don't envy the planning, development, and sustainability staff, their role in evaluating these applications and coming up with a staff recommendation. You know, a lot of times they evaluate these things sometimes in a vacuum. And then but that's why we're having a hearing here today, is to have the applicant come and provide some more context for their application. And that isn't, you know, the planning staff doesn't always have that benefit. And, you know, I just want to sort of acknowledge that. And Mr. Phillips is right also. We can't condition I mean, you have your decision space is to deny it or approve it. And we can't put conditions on this, but you know, I would take some issue with Mr. Phillips' sort of contentions about having to provide additional information. You know, I would think that the applicant and the applicant's representative would, you know, be very open to providing as much information as is available to support their applicant's position. And I think that's all that the planning staff has done in this particular situation, at least from my humble point of sort of being on the outside looking in.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll get to you, Mr. Phillips, in just a moment. I actually took a drive out there this morning and looked around, and hopefully it wasn't trespassing. Well, may have been, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it looked like indeed there might be locations that at least didn't appear any steeper than where some of the other homes in the area have been built. But that's just a total armchairing of the analysis. I guess what I would want to avoid, and this would be a worst case scenario for me with any family transfer, is that because we are, as opposed to a subdivision, with family transfer, we have no ability to condition it, so that a worst case scenario would be we approve this, we create lots on the ground, and then you're absolutely right. The slope and zoning compliance will be, and building permit will pick up whether it's a go or no go for a particular building location. But at that point, it's too late to do anything about the division of the land. The lots will have been created and they will be there in perpetuity, even if after the fact we discover that it's actually not going to work to build something there. That would be the worst case scenario, and I think that's why we're probing the issue in the way that we are. Mr. Phillips, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all of that input. And I guess I want to echo that we are providing absolutely as much information as we possibly can in this case. This exhibit was provided by downloading publicly available LiDAR data that's a 1 meter grid. So it's incredibly high resolution topographic data, which is why you have these areas of kind of mottled green and white areas. You know, the old school way of doing these slope maps was to send out a crew and cherry pick locations to show as flat of slopes as possible. And we're not hiding behind any of that kind of strategy. This is very much as high a resolution exhibit as we could possibly provide.
Thank you. So I guess I would come back to taking a different run at this. My question earlier in terms of there being alternate building sites. So if what was depicted earlier based on the LiDAR and slope mapping, if what was depicted earlier won't work, are there other locations that you're looking at here that you think would be acceptable and actually would work?
Yes.
Okay. Juanita, further questions on this?
Yeah, no, you shared my concerns and I, yep, understand Josh's perspective. And then not to make light of it, but Mark is a violin maker, and so that gives me a little comfort in his attention to detail and creativity. And so I'm thinking, well, geez, if anyone can figure out how to make this work, maybe a violin maker can. But yeah, and so Dave, when you drove out there, how did you feel about it? Because
I was hoping no one else would be driving down the road as I was driving up, but
okay. Because hearing the staff report makes you feel one way, and then once we got the context, I was like, well, maybe there's a way that this could work where, because I agree, I don't want to be put in the position where we're approving something that becomes problematic for future owners or future neighbors or emergency service providers, what have you.
So I guess a couple thoughts. One, it's different than the slope issue as far as the forest management piece. It absolutely is the case that you guys have done a lot of work up there, and it was apparent that that you have. And I think I would say this to anyone: there's probably, once a home site is selected, a little bit more work that would need to be done in the home ignition zone around that particular structure. But overall, I was impressed by just the landscape work that had been accomplished up there. Like I said earlier, I don't have I was looking at this through a layperson's eyes as far as the slope goes, and there are certainly areas that would not be appropriate that are well above 25%, and other areas that certainly might work. But those are my general impressions. Mark?
Should I move on to number 18? I would like
Sure,
to
go ahead.
address that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think it's important for us to state, a couple of things. We did spend a lot of time and effort up there doing fuel mitigation and forest health work, which I included a letter from the Bitterroot RC&D that supports all the work we've done in the canyon, not only on our own property, but getting others involved. It's been a huge project and I think benefited all the neighbors greatly. And if you want to call these guys, they will tell you that I was instrumental, and my wife was instrumental on talking to neighbors and getting them on board, including the Smiths property, which, by the way, was approved here a few months ago. It's the adjoining property. Its topography is pretty much the same, and we are the ones that got them, and they've been up there for like 30 years too. And we finally got them on board to do fuel mitigation, forest health work to make everyone else's property. And then I just would like to add on top of that, we planted 250 after we went through it. We had to log it. There was a lot, it was very thick. I think there was 18 loads of logs, and we got pulp off it, which I think is important because it cuts down on the burning of, the smoke in the valley. We pulped, I think 9 loads we got out of there. And then we did a lot of hand work. And then after that was done, we went through and did native grass seeding through the whole property. And we also, and I have the receipts for this, I bought like 250 native plants and shrubs from the DNRC nursery here in town. And our family planted those all around the land. We have lived here. We are not somebody from out of town just trying to do a development. And that's all I want to say. I understand what you're screening here, but I think it's important to see what you are screening here. I think unless there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you. We might have some more questions, but
Should I stay up here? Or
you can take a load off and have a seat. We'll call you back up if we need you. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add one last comment, and that is that the Hollingers still live on the parcel that was created by his father's family transfer. So I don't see any other way to better demonstrate maintaining the spirit of this exemption than by doing what he's done.
Thank you. So one additional question, you've hit on it earlier, just as far as what might get revealed if this was a minor subdivision as opposed to a subdivision exemption through family transfer, what considerations might crop up that would need to be conditioned? Because there are some elements that would probably, that we've discussed here, that might get picked up during zoning compliance or at the building permit stage, and presumably even if an ultimate home location is selected in excess of, in an area that's in excess of 25%, there would be a variance process that could be pursued, I'm assuming. So maybe address that first, and then what other impacts might be revealed during subdivision.
Well, to take the variance first, I think there would have to be a demonstration of hardship before that would be supportable. Just in general concept, a variance needs to, you need to demonstrate hardship to go in that direction. As far as like the state review criteria that address things like wildlife habitat, impacts to the environment, impacts to public health and safety, there would probably be more tools to work with as far as defensible space, what the dwellings are composed of. I think there is, Nick, is there Class A roofing requirements in CD4? So that actually would be sort of an overlap with the subdivision regulations, but you could probably end up doing a little bit more with like siding, decking, and that sort of thing, using the what we call the 608 review criteria, the state review criteria that address public health and safety. So there would be more tools within subdivision review. There's a little bit of overlap with ZD4 as far as the tools that we have. I think ZD4, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, I think it has a 4:12 ratio on roof requirement, something like that. So basically a fairly steep roof as opposed to a flat roof, dealing with, I think, ember shower sort of situations. So we would have more tools under subdivision, but there are some tools that remain with the ZD4 standards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But like wildlife habitat, that would be something that would be maybe more sweeping, if you will, under subdivision review that we could take a look at.
Okay, thanks. Juanita, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Tim buffered for me when you said wildlife. What did you say about wildlife?
Well, under the state review criteria, you would have a review for impacts to wildlife habitat, and the natural environment. That's something that would be completely absent from a zoning compliance review.
Tim, can you think of an example of, in a similar situation, what sort of conditions have been imposed relative to wildlife?
Well, and I don't know in this context whether there's any wildlife deal breakers. I mean, I think what we've done actually fairly recently on a subdivision, and it was Nick's project, we recommended a condition for bear-proof trash containers. If you have like an unmitigatable situation, which you can't really, unless you go through subdivision, you can't figure out whether you have that with regard to a wildlife impact. that would be a situation that might call for a recommendation of denial of the subdivision. I don't necessarily think you have that here, but you would never know unless you went through subdivision review.
Yeah, that's exactly a question that comes to mind is what red flags might there be that would trigger denial of if it was going through full-blown subdivision, and is there anything that would be necessary to condition that would otherwise, that's either of a critical nature or that would otherwise not be addressed to some extent through ZD4. Mr. Hollinger.
Well, I just wanted to say that one thing that Joshua was alluding to before, initially we put in a no-build zone, a pretty big one all along the creek with wildlife habitat in mind. But we decided to take that out because it got too complicated. But that is our intent, to make a huge corridor. There are a lot of homes up Patty Canyon that are built up by the creek, and but it would be, in simple terms, we would value preserving, and that's why we live up there, the wildlife habitat.
Do you still think that any of the home sites that would work within that 25% or less slope category would be accessed off of Burning Tree Drive versus Patty Canyon?
Oh, they all would be
They
on
all would
Burning
be?
Tree.
Okay. Thank
Because
you.
the creek borders the rest of the property. You'd have to cross the creek and that is too steep.
Right.
So it'd all be off Burning Tree.
Okay. Other questions, Juanita?
Yeah, you guys were talking about bear resistant trash containers, and is that something that the neighborhood already does, and I'm still not quite sure how that's would be enforced, even if that was, say, the county's desire. How would that be enforced?
Is that typically a covenant issue when that is added as a condition?
Yeah, it's actually a provision in Chapter 3 of our subdivision regulations in sensitive wildlife situations. The way the condition typically reads is that the subdivision shall use bear-resistant garbage containers, but the details of that are spelled out in your covenants, and that's a section of the covenants that can't be amended or deleted without governing body approval. So I suppose that subdivision could go against, could rebel and not use bear-resistant containers, but that's kind of the best that can be done after the filing of a subdivision plat.
Well, I guess the other thing just to bear in mind is that there's certainly efforts afoot to, through changes to the health code or otherwise, other regulatory means to address bear-proof containers within what we call the bear buffer zone that would probably kick in this geographic area regardless. So. Other questions, Juanita?
I just want to take a temperature,
or just comments. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a way to make this work. And so if it was approved, if we approved it, and it's just you and me, we don't have Josh, so I just want to make sure that I want to.
It's the two of us.
Yeah, that want to make sure we're on the same page. And so if it's approved, what's the heartburn? And I don't like going against staff recommendations with all the work that's been in place, but I feel like context and eyes on the ground, feet on the ground makes me feel a little more comfortable with approving this. And I guess as still a discussion point, like how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think the process is working as it should. I absolutely appreciate staff being willing to, based on what they have in hand, to make a recommendation, even if it's a denial, and not second guess what the commission might or might not like. But we've also heard information through the process submitted prior to today and even today that adds additional context that I think is important. I don't honestly see irrevocable harm being done if we approve this today. The biggest concern that I would have, and with the testimony we've received and what we have heard, it's mitigated some of my concerns in that we have folks who are long-term community members who are wanting to create parcels for their kids to occupy and actually have an intent to do so. My biggest concern at the end of the day, which I have faith that, or I hope to have faith that Eli and Associates and the applicant here can figure out, is that there actually are buildable locations on these parcels. Because like I say, worst case scenario would be we create the parcels, no ability to condition this, and then lo and behold, discover months or sometime down the line that, well, we really can't build. Well, then we've created lots that are never going to be occupied, and we don't want that. Having been out there, I feel a lot better about the fire hazard and risk mitigation piece. And again, as we all know, ultimately it's going to come down to that 100 feet or so around wherever the structure is built to do final mitigation within the home ignition zone. But feel better about that. I guess a question that I would have that I think would resolve itself later on in the process would be sanitation and septic, but presumably if there's a place to build a home, there would be a place to deal with that also. Juanita?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dave. I'm going to make the motion to approve the application by Mark and Jill Hollinger.
Okay, Nick, do you want to bring up the so Juanita, if you want to make the motion, just swap out the word deny with approve, presumably.
I just lost you guys on my screen, so hold on here. Let me find you again.
If you
okay, yep, I found you now. I move to approve the request by Jill and Mark Hollinger to utilize the aggregation exemption as presented in the subdivision affidavit.
Second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. And I move to approve the request by Jill and Mark Hollinger to utilize the family transfer exemption to create and transfer 3 parcels to their children, Brooks Hollinger, Christopher Hollinger, and Holly Hollinger.
Second. Any further discussion on that? I guess I would just add that I hope folks understand that there is a process that's in place, and the reason why we go through this is because there actually have been instances where folks have stood at the podium and made a similar case, maybe not with as compelling details and context as you've provided, and lo and behold, a few years later, it looks like we've been duped into approving something that ultimately just got flipped and turned into an investment property. I don't see any evidence of that happening in this case. So any further discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good luck. You bet. And thanks, Nick and Tim, for your work on this, and thanks, Lauren, who's not here. Thanks, John. Don't leave yet. We still have more fun and excitement. We have our 4th and final public hearing. This would be the fifth, the Smith family transfer.
Thank you. So let me get this set up here. All right, so this is the Smith family transfer. The owner and claimant is Michael Smith, and the representative is Montana Northwest Company. So starting with project location, so it's located at 2088 Kaufman Road, which is 2 miles south of the county line in Condon, so the very northern part of the county up at the Swan. Looking at existing on-site conditions, the property is 125 acres in size. It is home to a commercial guest ranch, Falls Creek Guest Ranch. They do offer vacation retreat that offers cabin rentals and event hosting, and the claimant and recipient both live and work on site in private residences. So the proposal is just one division. The recipient is the claimant's adult daughter, Emma, and she would receive tract 2, which is 103.9 acres in size. The applications specifically stated that they were transferring the larger tract to their daughter, as it is the income generating portions of the property, and she works and lives on the guest ranch. Then the claimant would retain ownership of the remaining 21.25 acres, which is tract 1. So again, just going to go over the rebuttable presumptions and general evasion criteria points that were triggered. So rebuttable presumption number 5 was triggered because like the aforementioned guest ranch is a commercial use on the property. Then general evasion criteria number 18. So similar as we discussed in the last one, this is located up in the woods. So there could possibly be conditions of approval related to mitigating wildfire hazard, wildfire hazard, wildlife habitat preservation, and the possible floodplain delineation. It is in an area that is not in the floodplain, but because there's a whole some high flowing creeks through, possibly could trigger that review during subdivision review. Now I'm just going to go over the family transfer questions with the applicant.
Come on up to the mic.
I'm going to start by having you state your name for the record.
Michael Smith.
Thank you. Question 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No.
Question 2, do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Question 3, have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No.
Question 4, will the property be developed?
No.
And question 5, will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
Thank you. And staff is recommending approval of the family transfer, and I am here for the questions.
Okay, Mr. Smith, anything that you'd like to add?
Nothing really. I mean, we're just trying to set something up. My daughter, we sent a letter in. My daughter is doing online college, and she works at the Swan Valley School as a paraprofessional. And then she has an after-school program in the Valley where she has about 22 kids show up every Wednesday after school that she does at the church. So she's really invested in the kids of the Valley. And I mean, it's just kind of important to bring them in. If you've been in the Valley, it's almost like there's nobody there, and then people come out of the woodwork. So she just really invested in the Valley. And as a teacher, you really couldn't afford to stay in the Valley, if that's your only source of income. Just the way things are,
Great. Well, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Juanita, any questions?
Yeah. So, access to both the tracks. Can you explain that to me, Nick or Michael? Can you access both the tracks? So if there's this horrible falling out between Emma and her parents and they don't want to talk to each other, what happens?
Right. Well, I mean, naturally, the main driveway, you can kind of see how it comes in. It accesses all portions.
Is your microphone on? Is it green?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It accesses all portions of that. And so, when we final platted in the 21 acres, we'd naturally have a right of way in that driveway. But all the rest of it, you can see where the drives come around and they access every other point.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I have none. Okay, let's queue up a motion here. If there's no other public comment out there. Okay, there you go, Juanita.
Thank you. I move to approve the request from Michael Smith to utilize the family transfer exemption as presented in the exemption application and affidavit.
Second, any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you.
Is there anything else that anyone has to bring before us? Okay, with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.